Awesome. Hey everyone, and welcome to the next fireside chat. I'm Sawit, and I'm the project lead for Nebula Protocol. And today I have me, Sunny, co-founder of Osmosis Labs. Sunny, how are you today?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited. I'm doing pretty well today. I am in Paris. It's a little bit early right now. It's 5:30 a.m., but yeah, ready to get started.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us as always. And I guess to start things off, do you mind giving us a brief introduction about both yourself, Osmosis, and how the idea for the project kind of came about?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of background on myself. I've been working in Cosmos ecosystem for about 5 years now. Joined in summer of 2017 as an intern. Just got really interested in like proof of stake, and so I was like I was reading all the different proof of stake white papers I could find, and out of all of them, Tendermint was just like to me like the simplest and the most elegant and easiest, and it's like, wow, we can like ship this in a year. And so it took us a little bit longer than a year to ship, but I still think it's the best proof of stake consensus system. And so I started working with them, and then originally just on Tendermint stuff, and then I learned about this whole Cosmos larger vision that they had, and I was like, whoa, this like fixes all of my like concerns with like Ethereum and like just single blockchains. And so yeah, I started working with them on Cosmos stuff, helped build a lot of the core tooling that we need for this multi-chain world, because we really believed in this idea of app chains, which I think we can get into. But yeah, so built tools like Tendermint Core, Cosmos SDK, IBC, and spent a number of years working on those. And then finally, once those tools were ready to and mature enough to a point where I was like, okay, it's time we can actually start to build real things with these. Then, me and a couple other people started brainstorming of like, okay, what do we want to build with this? And it seemed like a very obvious thing to build was a DEX, right? Like, that if you look at other ecosystems, usually you need some sort of DEX there to kickstart the rest of the DeFi ecosystem. And so and we had a lot of ideas around how, if we wanted to build a DEX, what are the important things we would focus on. A big one is privacy and like front running resistance. I think that was like a big piece that we didn't see any other DEX really tackling. And so that we started working on Osmosis about a year and a half ago. It's a DEX app chain. It's a DEX as its own chain. And so the idea was like, okay, what are the cool things that we can do with our own blockchain that another DEX building on an existing platform could not do? And so yeah, just been working on shipping that. We've been live for a little bit over a year now. We celebrated our 1 year anniversary last year, and yeah, just focused, had a lot of ups and downs throughout the course of the 1 year, but we're just moving forward and shipping a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. And speaking of app chains, I think one of the trends that we have started being seen lately in the industry overall is one of existing projects or protocol on existing smart contract chains, like let's say Ethereum, deciding to migrate and instead build out their own application-specific blockchains. I guess the most recent major example of that is probably DYDX, which I think recently, about a month ago, kind of announced that their V4 will be built as an independent chain using the Cosmos SDK, so basically the same base stack as Osmosis, right? With that said, as with Osmosis as a protocol that has been as its own chain since launch, what kind of made you decide to go the application-specific chain route, and what kind of attracts you to the concept? And overall, what do you see as the main advantages or disadvantages of the two approach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've been an app chain from the beginning, and in a way, I guess our bet was like one around like vertical integration. So, like if you look at like a product like Apple, like iPhone, right? What makes the iPhone like such a good product is how well vertically integrated everything is, right? Apple writes the software, but they also build the hardware, and they like build the, a lot of the most popular apps, they build them. They go as deep as like, actually, no, they started making their own CPUs now, because they were like, oh, we want to like optimize this all the way. And so, that vertical integration is something that we think that like is how you build the best products. So if you look at other DEXs, Uniswap or something, they'll have their smart contracts and then their front end. But Osmosis, we can control our contracts, our front end, but we also control the blockchain itself. And one thing is, as well as, our team also maintains the Kepler wallet, which is like the main wallet for the Cosmos ecosystem. So we have this like sort of full stack from wallet all the way to blockchain, and that gives us that ability to like do features and UX that other DEXs can't do. So as a very simple example, on Osmosis, we let you actually pay your transaction fees in any token you want. So, I always found it like a big issue that like on all other blockchains, you have to use like the native token. Like, I think it's really bad UX, like, not good, not very user friendly at all. So, on Osmosis, we're like, hey, we want to make it so you can use any token to pay your transaction fee. But to do that, we have to go change the core fundamentals of the blockchain. We also have to go make the wallet support that as well. And then we have to go, make sure our core blockchain knows how to use the prices from the DEX to like compare the value of different fee tokens. So it's like, there's like this one feature, but it requires integration at so many layers of the stack. And that's something like, Uniswap or something just couldn't do, because they don't have the ability to change how Ethereum works. And so that kind of was the bet behind everything that we're doing. And so, we have this like long sort of series of, roadmap of items of like that we want to build, taking advantage of this sort of vertically integrated system that we have.
I see. Yeah, and going off the iPhone and phone analogy, I think that's a perfect example. If you look at the phone industry, right, it's one that very competitive, with a lot of players, with more players coming into the space basically every other month. And I think in the tech space, the same kind of could be said, that there are new protocols, new DEXs, new designs launching on all the different chains pretty often. Would you say that for Osmosis, the being vertically integrated, really tightly vertically integrated, and the user experience that integration kind of offers is the main selling point of the product, or what do you think would be the main core advantage over other competitors that will allow the product, the protocol, and the ecosystem to kind of stay ahead of its curve going forward?
Yeah. So, the app chain is definitely like a kind of good competitive thing right now. But, I think that that's not going to be the only thing, especially because there's going to be more and more DEX app chains coming, right? So we see, this pitch that we've been making for years, it's like starting to come true, right? You see, DYDX have launched on Cosmos now. Kujira has launched their DEX on Cosmos. You have Say, which is coming soon. So you have there's gonna be a lot of sort of DEXs on Cosmos. So, just being the app chain is not in itself the feature, right? It's like, okay, what are the things that you can do as an app chain and what are we working on that will be the interesting features? So there's a couple of sort of things that we have. So one of them is, like I mentioned earlier, big focus on like privacy and front running resistance. So how Osmosis actually started was we were doing a lot of research on like front running and like MEV that was happening on Ethereum. And we were like, not very happy about that. And so we're like, okay, how can we reduce the amount of MEV, protect users from like these front running and sandwiches? And so we came up with this idea called threshold encryption. And what threshold encryption is it's a way of making sure all the transactions in the mempool, so before it's put into a block, are encrypted. So no one can read them. If no one can read the transactions, no one can front run you. And so I think that is going to be like one of the most important features that like is going to separate Osmosis. I think other, you know, I think that's actually the one of the biggest things that's going to separate DeFi from, you know, any centralized finance. I think the two biggest competitive advantages that DeFi systems have over centralized finance is one is privacy and the other is composability. And so I think having that privacy in the mempool is going to be, you know, when you trade on FTX or something, you know, you don't know that Alameda or someone is not reading all your stuff. Or if you trade on Robinhood, you know, Citadel is reading all the trades before they get executed. And so I think that privacy, that pre-execution privacy is like one of the biggest selling points of DeFi specifically as a whole. And then, you know, we're going to be like sort of the first to ship a DEX with those functionalities. And then the other, you know, on the composability side, you know, I think we have like an interesting ecosystem of products now being built around Osmosis. So there's after the sort of Terra collapse of there was a lot of projects that have like sort of moved over to Osmosis. And we're working on integrating very tightly with some of them. So for example, like the Mars protocol, you know, they're building like a lending protocol, but like, you know, we're focused. So we actually do have a smart contracting system on Osmosis now called Cosmwasm. But we take a slightly different approach where like it's a permissioned smart contracting system, and that, you know, we sort of work with very specific projects and make sure we're like extremely tightly integrated with them. So, you know, if, you know, it's not like, you know, Uniswap doesn't really know about Compound and Compound doesn't really know about Uniswap. But when these two protocols, you know, if you look at your centralized exchanges, you look at FTX, right? The reason their margin system is so good is how well integrated their trading engine is with their margining engine. And so by having these sort of close collaborations and like even, you know, maybe even deeper composability with some of these other products, I think we're going to be able to build a lot of an ecosystem that can like really compete with the product offering of centralized exchanges.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, on the ecosystem side, that's definitely something that we can go into a bit later. But curious to kind of dig deeper into what you mentioned about, you know, DEXs and DeFi versus that more traditional centralized exchanges. How do you kind of see the relationship between usages in terms of the user side, the usages between DEX and SEXs going forward, you know, let's say in the next 3, 4, 5 years? And, you know, I think right now, even though usages and adoption of DEXs like Osmosis and Uniswap has kind of grown pretty impressively over the last year or so, what do you think would be the main core point at where, you know, the main user decide, a user or the larger group of users kind of decide to switch from, let's say, using Binance or TX to doing that transaction and trades on chain instead?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be when the UX of the DEXs become as good or better as the centralized exchanges. I think we're still a really far way away from that today. Like, so, you know, if I going to create an account on Awesome, everyone says that, like, so many people tell me that like the Osmosis UX is like better than anything else in crypto, and I'm like, really? Like that's not good. If I think there's so much you know, that's not, I don't know what that's saying about all of crypto UX, where, you know, when you use something like Coinbase, it's like at least very user friendly enough that, like, you know, I can show my mom how to use it and like she can get the hang of it after some explaining. But with something like Osmosis right now, it's just like very difficult. And so, you know, we need to get to the point where, you know, wallets are going to be much more easier for people to use, and like, you know, maybe not, you know, how, you know, better forms of like custody, but also just making the UIs more user friendly that anyone can pick it up and start using. And until we start to see that, we're not going to see like a migration from the centralized exchanges. Because today, like, you know, our view is that like we've always been very focused on like how do we bring the average retail traders to our platform, because how we see it is at the end of the day, you know, the institutional volume, the larger volume follows where the liquidity is, but then the liquidity will follow where the retail volume is. And the retail volume comes from that user friendliness and ease of onboarding. And so that's, the big focus. I think a big thing is that the UX needs to get better. And then also, I think right now DEXs just don't offer the same product as like centralized exchanges, where, most DEXs right now are very sort of focused on their own little ecosystem. So, Uniswap's only with Ethereum assets, Serum is only with Solana assets. But if you look on centralized exchanges, the biggest volumes are not in these intra-ecosystem assets, but it's in these like core larger assets, right? Of, it's in the L1 assets and things like that. And so, no or very few DEXs today are like really providing a market between these inter ecosystem, whereas actually where most of the volume exists today. And if I wanted to, I had Ethereum and I wanted to switch to AVAX, right? It's not an easy process right now. I have to go, maybe convert that Ethereum to, USDC or something, bridge it over to Avalanche, and then do another swap into AVAX using a different DEX. And it's like, how can we make that process like simple, one click, where users don't have to do all, have wallets on all these different chains and everything.
Yeah, and I guess on that point, in terms of the UX and the centralized exchanges, one common reason why people like to say they still trade on centralized exchanges is in terms of speed. And we have seen, blockchains and both products that try to optimize for that. Let's say Solana, and now even some Cosmos chain are trying to reduce their block time. On your part, being an NMM and being a DEX yourself, you think that's part of the consideration as well? Or how big do you think concern for speed and transaction execution is for, getting increasing user adoption for DEXs or Osmosis specifically?
Yeah, so I think the speed of execution is important, but there's like some balance there. So today, Osmosis, has about 6-second block times, which, it's actually, I think, very trivial to reduce. If we wanted to today, we could actually go reduce those to like, probably less than 2 seconds. Getting them below then, 1 second and half a second that like you see on some chains, like that, those actually do come with a lot of sort of trade-offs with like decentralization and stuff. So Solana can reduce their block times quite a bit, but like it has all these like trade-offs where no one can actually synchronize to the Solana blockchain, or no one can, they don't have Merkle trees, so there's no like client proofs and stuff. So there are trade-offs there. But yeah, so I think we can get them quite fast. And then on top of that, we can implement things like batch execution, which I think should exist anyways in blockchains, like, or in all exchanges, where like, sub like millisecond latencies are not what should be like this is a problem that exists in like centralized TradFi as well, where like because every little microsecond counted in the trading engine, it's like this led to like years, decades of like people just like doing this like high frequency trading and like optimizing the tiniest microseconds, where it's not really a valuable thing to be doing. It's like sort of, it's like creating a war over these microseconds for no reason, when instead, if you actually batch things in the course of like 1 second or something, and make sure that everyone who trades in the same 1 second gets the same pricing, that actually I think ends up being a better social good and like good useful product than these like sub-second execution systems.
Definitely. And yeah, to go on that, I think going back to what you mentioned about, Osmosis enabling smart contract execution through Cosmosis, how, going from building Osmosis as a standalone product to now, having more and more projects looking to build on Osmosis and deploying on the chain itself, what has kind of been the biggest change in terms of for both you and your team, and how you kind of approach the development of the product and the protocol itself?
Yeah, so this is definitely like something that we kind of had to migrate into, where we went from building like, oh, just we're the only users of our chain, and then moving into like, hey, okay, wait, there's other people also deploying here, and now we also have to do all this sort of like DevRel work with like working with other teams to make sure that they're able to deploy, making sure a lot of the development tooling is there. Like, we're developing this thing called Beaker, which is like, a toolkit for making it easy to develop CosmWasm applications. Yeah, so, I guess like, a little bit of shifting of the, we're kind of half working on our DEX, but then also half working on this like chain ecosystem. But I think this is like sort of the right approach, because what was happening earlier was, so, like I mentioned, I think that like to compete with centralized exchanges, we need to have like the similar products that they do, and they have a lot of products, right? They have their margin and perps and on-ramp and launch pads. And so we were actually trying to build a lot of that in-house for a while. So we were building our own lending protocol called Isotonic. We were, had ideas for how to go about building like, perps and all this kind of stuff. And what we realized then was like, okay, we were spreading ourselves way too thin. We like trying to work on all of these like different things by ourselves wasn't, working as well as we would have liked, especially when we're working on, we're also working on a lot of things from like wallet and DEX and chain and stuff. So it's like, okay, there's too much going on here. So that's why we said, okay, instead of that, let's actually, the CosmWasm ecosystem was like, growing very quickly, especially, a large part because of Terra. But, there's a lot of developers who knew this platform. And so we're like, okay, how can we, is there a way that we can just like work with other people to build out this like suite and just make sure that everything's tightly integrated? So yeah, we kind of like ended up importing the CosmWasm module so that, we can let other people come in and start building that. And then our team would be able to focus just on the trading engine and the chain itself, which now includes CosmWasm as an important component of the chain development. So yeah, that's kind of where we are today. And then after the, that was sort of the plan that, that we've been working on this for like, 4 or 5 months of this, but then the Terra collapse sort of, I guess, accelerated a lot of it, where, we had a larger influx of people interested in building stuff on top of Osmosis than we originally expected, right? And so, figuring out how do we manage, which products to like really focus our time on and integrating, because we do want to go for a very much quality over quantity approach. We would rather have 10 really amazing DeFi products on the Osmosis chain rather than 100 mediocre ones.
Yeah, and when it comes to choosing projects, I think you mentioned that you were looking into building protocols yourself, both lending, margin trading, and perhaps among others. Do you kind of see Osmosis eventually becoming, let's say, an equivalent to Binance, where they have multiple features or products that kind of encapsulate their core trading exchange? Or what's your kind of vision of where you want Osmosis to be in the next either 6 months or 1 year, or even, in a longer time span from now?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we want to like, you go on Binance or FTX or whatever, they have their all these products that they have, right? And I think as to compete with the centralized exchanges, the Osmosis also needs to have the same sort of products. Now, it doesn't, some of these products can be integrations with like Mars, or Levana is another one that's like going to be building perps on top of Osmosis. And so, these different things can be powered by different protocols in the back end. But, I think we need a cohesive, easy UI that like offers these products in this sort of like super app similar to what the centralized exchanges do today. So you'll have your margin and perps and NFT marketplaces as well. You see all the exchanges started adding their own NFT markets as well. So I imagine that will be something that will eventually make its way into Osmosis as well. So yeah, all the sort of products you see on exchanges, you can expect to kind of see that on Osmosis as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. And I think speaking of features, right, one feature that I think Osmosis has for a while that I don't think can be replicated on centralized exchanges is that of, I think it's called superfluid staking. Do you mind, telling us a bit more about what the feature is, how you come up with it, and, what you think is the main benefit for users of the Osmosis?
Yeah. So superfluid staking was so what it was is, people might have heard of like liquid staking and staking derivatives like Lido, for example. And we've been tracking this stuff for a long time. And it's always just a little bit concerning to us because it feels a little bit like these staking derivative platforms are almost like undermining the security of proof of stake, where in proof of stake what happens is we have these idea of bonding periods where if you want to remove your tokens, you have to wait 2 weeks or something before you get your tokens. And this is very important to the security system of this protocol. The problem with staking derivatives is what's happening is people are able to, get out of that position very quickly. Someone is still stuck in the 2 week bonding period, but it's not the person. So what'll happen is someone can do something malicious and then sell their staking derivative immediately. And then whenever the slashing would happen, it's not going to be the person who did the bad behavior gets slashed. It'll be whoever bought their tokens. And this is like not what we should be doing with proof of stake. And so to fix this, what we realize is people want these staking derivatives because they want to be able to do more things with their tokens, right? There's a lot of capital that's locked up in staking. How can people reuse that? And the idea with superfluid staking is that let's use assets in DeFi, and then you take the DeFi the asset to get back. So normally you get some sort of token when you participate in DeFi. So if you're in an AMM, you're getting these LP shares. If you're in a lending protocol like Compound, you're getting the C token. So you're getting back some sort of token. But these tokens have value underlying them. And it's like, why don't we use this to actually secure the chain? So, a lot of the liquidity in Osmosis is paired with Osmo, which is the staking token. And so we can say, hey, look, you're pairing this with, you have this LP share, it has Osmo underneath it. Why don't you stake the LP share itself? That's worth, and our protocol understands that, right? So something like Ethereum couldn't do this because Ethereum blockchain does not understand Uniswap LP shares. But for us, our blockchain, our proof of stake system can understand the LP shares from the DEX. And so it could say, hey, when you stake this LP share, this is worth this much Osmo. We're going to have it be treated as this much value. And so what's cool is so from a user perspective, it's nice because you're going to be earning liquidity rewards and fees at the same time as earning staking rewards. But from the protocol perspective, this is cool because it's giving the protocol more security. It's like saying, hey, all of the liquidity and TVL on our platform is actually helping secure the blockchain itself. And so this is and it turns out this actually was very helpful for us during the Terra crash, where the security we got from superfluid staking actually, it never ended up happening. But if there was a situation where Terra got 2/3 attacked, they could have taken enough Osmo to potentially 1/3 attack Osmosis. But that wasn't possible at all because we actually had enough security thanks to the superfluid staking. So it's really cool to see that it did actually help protect us in the real world situation.
Yeah, no, definitely agree, and this session has really been amazing and insightful, and there's really a lot more questions that we could potentially go into, but unfortunately, I think we are running out of time. So yeah, I think unfortunately need to wrap it up there. Thank you again, Sunny, for joining, and this has been a really great time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great.
Awesome.